I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest is a former Marine, and now he is a presence coach. So please, without further ado, let's jump into my interview with TJ Beaudette. TJ, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
It's going so well, Charles. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, really excited. Meeting a lot of great and interesting people on LinkedIn, and 2024 is off to a really good start. And you're continuing the flow here for me of having really cool guests who I can learn from, which I hope translates to my audience learning along with me. That's the goal. So I'm looking forward to it. That being said, I know a little about you. See you on LinkedIn, social media. Could you introduce yourself to my audience, please?
Absolutely. And I just want to preface that if I grimace, it's because I tweaked my back yesterday. So every once in a while I have this spasm and I make these faces that it's just that flash of a back pain.
Listen, don't even worry about it because I think I have that personality and face that people tend to grimace. So don't worry, you're good.
So I'm TJ. I'm from Long Island, New York, born and raised, and pretty normal childhood, love playing sports, love being outside, getting into trouble, cutting through backyards, all that stuff. And when 9/11 happened, my best friend's dad was a firefighter that passed away. And I remember that on September 11th, we were in school, we didn't really know what was going on. Then I got home and I just saw the images of the destruction at Ground Zero. It's like really impacted me. Then later that evening, I learned that my friend's dad was missing. And that was the moment where I knew that I wanted to join the military. I wanted to go to war. I wanted to go fight the bad people in the world, the people that hurt me and others that I loved. And so that's what I did. Even though I was 12, that was always in the back of my mind. Thought I was going to go into the Air Force. Then I met a Marine and I was like, oh, that dude's really badass. I want to be like him. And I went to college, graduated, and became a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps.
So it always amazes me, and obviously, and thanks a lot. You made me feel older than I even feel some days. Telling me you're 12 and 9/11. So I was, I literally remember vividly being at work. My wife worked in the complex across the way from me. And I remember everybody gathered around TVs. And my first reaction was call my wife, let's go. We got to get home. I didn't know what's happening, right? But I just vividly remember, and it's amazing how people still can remember vividly everything that happened that day. So I would imagine, I'll ask you, so how you start to touch on it, but how growing up in New York, and especially with your friend's father being a firefighter, dying during 9/11, how did that shape your perspective on service and community and influence your decision to join the Marines?
That's a great question. I think my community was very tight-knit and the relationships were very close. Yet there was a lot of between my town and even the surrounding towns, there was massive differences between the people. And I noticed that that's kind of like a thing in the Northeast as I've moved around. I was like, oh, that's like a Northeast thing. Right. So, and before 9/11, it was like these towns that were separate. And then I noticed that the 9/11 was an awful event, yet it brought everyone together. It was like it brought people together between communities in New York, between states, as a nation. And in that togetherness, that unity was also a lot of hope. And I think I carried that hope with me as I went forward, that if I continued to fight for that, that hope would be there in the future, or that unity.
Mm. And that's interesting you say that, 'cause I'm from Philadelphia, and that what you talked about is very evident here in Philadelphia too. The whole, it's we're different, but then everybody did, everybody was drawn together during that. Um, so you said you were only 12 when that happened, and you know, so even TJ at that young of an age, was that feeling really like strong inside you that I'm going to do this. I want to join the military at that point.
From what I remember of that feeling, yes. It was, I mean, it was just confusion. It was anger. It was fear. It was like a vulnerability, like, oh my gosh, this world seems so beautiful and perfect, not beautiful and perfect. I mean, even as a 12-year-old, I knew it wasn't perfect, but to see our reality rocked in such a way that just like sent ripples through everyone. Yeah, it emotionally impacted me enough to carry that through my teenage years and then join the military.
So did you carry that with you? Now, listen, I know because I have friends, I know people who were in the Marines, obviously not the easiest branch to join. Is that, did you find yourself leaning on that as you were going through your journey becoming a Marine? Was there any points during that kind of start to second guess yourself, or how did it feel? Did you always lean on that to try to get you through?
Mm. I think when I was going through it, I thought I was leaning on that. Yet now that I look back on it, and I've moved through a time in my life where I hit a real significant rock bottom that had to do with the military, finding purpose in the corporate world, a divorce. Looking back on it from this perspective, I think that um, it actually runs deeper than that. It's more like like childhood stuff, like parents being divorced and me having a fear of not fitting in because, my dad wasn't in the picture. It's actually that fear of not fitting in that drove me through to accomplish and to succeed in some of the most difficult training in the military.
So what so being in it, I think you were an infantry officer, correct?
Mhm.
So was there any pivotal experiences that you would say really defined you or touched you deeply on a personal level, especially during your deployment to Afghanistan?
I think two. One in before I went to Afghanistan, uh, the journey to become an infantry officer, to become an officer in the Marines. Um, there's a test that all officers have to go through. It's called Officer Candidate School,
Mm.
or you go to the Naval Academy. There's two different paths into it. I went to Officer Candidate School, and one night we were doing land navigation, which you just have your compass, a protractor, and you're just walking around through the woods trying to find these boxes to make sure that we can lead troops through the woods and we know where we're going. And the running joke amongst the enlisted Marines is that lieutenants, officers are always lost. So I was walking around and I lost my land nav card.
Mm.
And then it started like raining and thundering and lightning. And I was so afraid of telling the instructors that I lost my card. I mean, for like 2 hours, I was like on my hands and knees crawling through the woods at night trying to find this thing. And I couldn't find it. And so I had to go tell the instructors that I lost my card, which could mean that I failed OCS, and would have been so ashamed.
Mm.
It was like my deepest fear of like of going back to my college having failed officer candidate school. So I got yelled at a lot that night. I felt awful that night. I think my platoon mates all had to hear me getting yelled at for like 30 minutes, so they had to stay awake longer. And I just felt so small. And the next day I woke up and the sun came up again. And I was like, you know what? I may be getting kicked out of OCS, but I'm still here right now. So why not double down on my effort and see what happens? So that's what I did. I just got even more motivated and never heard of it again. Graduated out OCS. So that's one lesson that always stuck with me. Like, hey, if you're still here, just keep going, keep stepping forward. And then in Afghanistan, well, maybe I'll hold it there for a second, unless you want me to go into the other side, which is a little bit darker and more challenging to reflect on.
Yeah, no, and I think I may know where you're going to go with this because I've seen something that you may have shared. I think this is good to kind of go into that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had this idea that once I went to Afghanistan, I would achieve this ultimate fulfillment for life. And we got there, and my company was in a more quiet area of operations. It wasn't as kinetic, certainly as I was looking for. Plus, I was the executive officer, so I was behind a desk a lot. And we had been there for about 3 months, and it was just before Christmas time. And there was a Marine from a different company, from Bravo Company, that was killed on December 23rd. And we had got the order that we weren't able to patrol on Christmas. So we didn't. And the Taliban had kind of free reign to the area of operations that day. But the reason we weren't able to patrol or told not to is because it would be too difficult for the family members to receive the news that that their son or daughter was killed on Christmas. So that was the first flash in my mind of like, wait a second. Like, this is a war. What does it matter if a human dies on December 25th or December 26th? What does it actually matter? So that was the first time I started to have questions about me, just individually, what I was doing there and why I chose to be there. And I wasn't ready to look deeply into that at the time, but I think fast forward a couple years, the fall of Afghanistan was all over the news 2 years ago, and it like clicked. It was like, yeah, it's like I started to have these feelings of what are we doing there at the time, and then looking back on it, the way that it unfolded as it ended was really rough for all of us to see.
Yeah, I think that was tough for America to see, honestly, man, because I think we all start to question a lot of things, right? Like especially for you guys, people I know that were in the military and the sacrifice and just you start to question, was it worth it, right? And then, I think I saw something that you shared recently on social media. It was related to fear, and it was something about I don't remember exactly, but you told a story or something about that the difference between you and an Afghan or the enemy basically who had been killed was just basically the ideology kind of thing. Like, could you maybe go into that a little bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important to give some context of how I got to that point. And it was a point where the fall of Afghanistan was all over the news. My divorce was not in a good place, so much of which was me. And I'm working 8 hours a day in medical device sales and studying for 3 hours a night in an MBA program, just getting my butt kicked. So what was once my life's purpose was kind of crumbling in front of my eyes. And I'm struggling to find purpose on a different path. So I'm going through a divorce and I'm getting kind of pressure from my family and my mom about what's going on. And I was just like, full stop, like, stop, like, boundaries up. Like, I need to figure out what's happening here. And then that led me to going back to therapy. It led me to running and then ultra running. It led me to being out in nature. And my first time I was out in nature by myself, 5 days, I was like, I'm going to get this meditation thing down. People can do this meditation thing. I'm going to figure this thing out. And it took me a long time. It took me hours just sitting in the grass. But I had this moment where I felt my energy and I felt my energy merge with nature around me. And it was like this like awareness, like this new depth of awareness into myself. And I was like, oh my gosh. And from there, I just knew that there was more to me and each human. And it's in that journey of healing and self-growth where I really started to realize that, yeah, the only difference between me and anyone else on this planet just our ideas, and our ideas are influenced about where we were born and where we grew up.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny you mention that too, because I just had a conversation about thoughts and ideas and all that just last week. Um, so so it seems like you had a lot going on, but it does seem like watching Afghanistan fall, it does seem like it was a profound moment for you. So, and this may be a difficult question, but how did those emotions kind of impact and affect your view on your own military service? And then in general, on just what were we doing there?
Mm. What I'm beginning to understand, or what I do understand, I loved the Marine Corps. I loved my time in the Marine Corps, right? Um, gosh, I'm a city kid from New York. I didn't grow up camping, and it was the Marine Corps that introduced me to nature and allowed me to see it, to experience nature for weeks at a time. So what brought challenges into my life in the form of killing and death and knowing so many Marines who have killed themselves since we've gotten back from Afghanistan, which continues. Like even last month, there was a Marine that I went to college with that killed himself. So there's a lot of pain in those memories, yet there's also so much beauty in those memories and the connection and the friendships, and that it introduced me to uh, the most healing thing, nature, that I wouldn't have been introduced to without it. So it's to look back and to understand that I think so many veterans get stuck in hanging on to their past for meaning because they're afraid if they let go, that there will be nothing there. Yet I'm learning that as I let go of it, and I can be just as proud of it, yet I can be more free to experience my emotions in the present moment, which is where healing and growth really is.
Yeah, that's really poignant. The whole, and I think I talk about it a decent amount too, is that whole, I found as I've gotten older, like, and listen, I come to you somewhat from your future, right? Like being 52, like, trust me, man, that inner peace that you're talking about, TJ, is going to, I can't even describe to you how much that's going to serve you as you continue to grow and get older. And it's interesting though, because it's the thing that's that inner peace, that calm thing that ends up being that fuel that allows you to grind and do things. So I'm glad that you've discovered that. Um, and you touched on something else, and this interests me too, being a little, a lot older than you, God. But I think back about some of my uncles, and my grandfather served in World War II. Had uncles that were in the service, and my dad even tried to enlist in for Vietnam, right? When I think back and hear some of those stories about just basically when they came back, it almost seemed like there was no appreciation for their sacrifice. How how have you found your impact? I feel at least now somewhat military, there's more appreciation for the sacrifices you guys make. I mean, what do you see now, and how does it impact you, whether it's good or bad?
Such a great question. And it's amazing, right, that there is so much more appreciation for the military these days than back in the 70s. That must have been so painful to go fight a war for this country in the jungles of Vietnam and then to come home and to not even be thanked for that. And I honor that generation and the challenges they had to endure. I think for me, um, what's so painful sometimes, it's almost like we're never going to make that mistake again as a nation. So now we thank our service members, and it almost seems unconscious. It almost just seems like, oh, that's what I do. That person's in the military. Thank you for your service. And in that, if we're not putting thought into thanking them, we may be missing the connection between the person that's thanking and the veteran. Maybe not. It could be a heartfelt thank you for your service. How are you? But when we turn it into a thank you for your service, it could also be a wall between two people. So the awareness of that and the person who's doing the thanking, I think it's a tough one. It's like, but can you look that veteran in the eye and say thank you for your service? Or better yet, how are you today? How are you? You know, because that thank you for your service may trigger emotions that the veteran doesn't fully understand from his time in service. Like, why do I feel unworthy of this praise?
Mm.
Why do I want to shrink because of this praise? And it's a tough one for veterans to understand and to begin to see within themselves.
Yeah, because I know for me, like I really what I always think about with it, it's not just the veteran. When if I speak to a veteran or I'm thanking them for their service, whatnot, right? One of the things I always think about is how much their family sacrificed, right? I think we kind of just think we could get caught up in just seeing that person and their service, but there's so much behind the scenes that goes into it as far as a wife, parents, what they go through. So I think it's important. And I enjoy having military guys on because I don't think you guys get enough thanks, man. I think honestly, it's almost something that it's an unthankful, like there's not enough thanks we can give for what you guys all do. So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about your transition from the military because I know you went into medical device sales, which I found interesting because I've been in healthcare analytics for like since I got out of high school at age 17. So we'll probably have a good conversation there. Before I touch on that though, I did want to ask you, you mentioned something, I didn't want to gloss over it. You mentioned about, so the whole meditation, the piece, but you did mention ultra running. Not easy, man. Like I listen, running, I definitely got myself in shape. I feel good. I work out hard. I love to lift weights. I suck at running. I've never been good at it. So when I hear ultra running, I go, wait a second. So what got you into that?
There's a moment where I was going through a divorce alone in an empty house. Like my world was like, I don't know if it's falling apart right now, if I'm figuring things out, but I just decided to run 30 miles that day. And I had been running like 5 miles, 5 miles, 5 miles. I think I did 10 miles before that. By no means was I ready for 30 miles. And it was not pretty and it was very slow. I walked most of it, but I got it done. And I felt good for the first time after that in a long time. And I was like, no matter what happens in my life with work, with my preceding divorce, with family, I can get a pair of shoes and I can always just run. So that kind of became the cornerstone of my journey, so to speak.
I love when you say that because I always think when I hear stuff like that, that's why women live longer than men because we think things are such a good idea and you just said it too. Like I just decided to run 30 miles. And I'm sorry, I have to mention this, but it reminded me of a friend of mine, Matt Scarfo. I remember this story. You'll appreciate this. He's from up that way, North Jersey area. One day during the pandemic, he decided he was just going to run from North Jersey down to Washington D.C. Like just picked his stuff up, left the house, ran. So yeah. So you guys, man, that's just God bless you, man. So all right. So the military, your ultra running, the meditation. So what did you take from all of this now in your transition into your career? Because I think, the other thing is you're in the military. What happens next, right? That's your life. Like that's what you thought about since 12. Now you go into, medical device sales. Like what was that
Mhm.
transition like?
It was good. It was good. It was pretty seamless, actually. So I thought that I would achieve this fulfillment in the military, and I didn't. This like ultimate fulfillment that would just be lasting, right? Like Ronald Reagan says, a lot of people wonder if they've ever made a difference. Marines don't have that problem. But I was still kind of having that problem. And yeah, so I made the decision to transition. and landed a job with Boston Scientific, a very good medical device sales company. And I was on an awesome team with awesome people. And they're still awesome people. They're crushing it. So I was like, "Oh, maybe this is it." Like I served for 8 years. Now it's time to live the American dream. And I doubled my salary right off the bat coming out of the military. Second year in, I was manager of the year. So it's like, this is, as I saw the next 20, 30 years ahead of me, never having to worry about finances or money. Yet it was still that same thing that I couldn't find in the Marines was still missing within, even in the corporate world, even in a great environment that I was fortunate enough to be in.
So then I guess that great segue, man. Like that, so you talk about the thing we wanted to talk about was you mentioned about you hit an emotional rock bottom and then you had to embark on this healing journey. So what are some of the key realizations or the moments that were really, the catalyst for that journey?
Once I started to see that the answers I was looking for was in the mirror and that I had been looking to the world for it. And I started to see it and I was like, oh my gosh. And it could be really hard to make that shift and to see it because of what I had been through in the past. Yet it is the journey of deeper and deeper freedom, self-freedom for ourselves.
Now, so I always find this interesting because um, something I like to talk about, I tell people is, how we talk about, well, self-evaluation, finding our why, that kind of thing. I had this poignant moment when I looked in the mirror and I figured it wasn't my why. I figured that I was the why not.
That's cool.
Looking right at me, I was the why not. But what I wanted to
Yes.
ask you is, I think that's scary for people, right? Because everybody says they want to do a self-evaluation, they want to look themselves in the mirror, right? So I kudos to you, TJ, because I think a lot of people say it, but I think here's this word, fear. I think they're petrified of what truly deep down is looking back at them.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you see?
I'm still scared of it. I'm still scared of it. And kudos to you as well, Charles, for looking back and for looking in the mirror at the why not. That's super cool. Yeah, it's still scary. It's still scary every day because you see it's the willingness to see both the beauty in us. That's the easy part. We love to show that part of ourselves to the world, but also what we're capable of. And that's the hard part. It's like, because if we're capable of it, if we're capable of it from our past, we're capable of it in the future as well. So it is scary. There's fear there. Yet I just realized that it was scarier to be on the path that I was on without looking at it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. And you said a great word there, man, capable. Because I think sometimes what happens, when we think of capability, I think everybody likes to think about it in a positive sense, right? We're capable of more. But I think also a lot of times when I look in the mirror, you know what I always realize? I'm still capable of doing less and being less and going back to that overweight. I'll say it, that fat guy that was, 100 pounds overweight, right? So I think capability, people tend to just get caught up in, I'm capable of more, but you got to be careful because you're also capable of less. So when you look in that mirror and you talk about your capabilities, right? Is there anything still that you look that you're still not ready to conquer or you haven't tried to, conquer yet?
Mm. Also, I just want to give a nod to you. Your transition at 47, I think I read it was, is so badass. That's
Thanks.
so cool. So
Yeah,
cool.
appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. I think I'm just taking this at the pace that I'm comfortable balancing this, right? Because I feel like I have this creativity, this message to share with people to help people in their own journey. And I feel like the world is shifting in such a way that more and more people are going to be asking these questions within the next generation. Yet I don't want to rush it because for myself, because even in that, if I'm capable of more or I'm capable of less, yes, if I'm capable of less, then even that's safe, right? Even that's safer for me. But if I'm capable of more and I bring myself into this world in such a way that brings the same destruction that I used to enjoy as a Marine, then it's like it's really intimidating. Um, so for me, it's just like learning to balance each day, meditate, ground, be joyful with where I'm at, let go of the expectations of what I think this journey should be, and just let it come because I know it's just coming as I'm ready for it.
You know, I
And I
think,
think,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I think if I force it, that's where I'm prone to bring aspects, you know, I fear forcing it. So I'm just learning to be still more and let it be as I'm ready for it.
Man, I really like that. The be still and not force it. That's, man, that's poignant, man. I really like that. Actually gave me a little bit of chills because I think what you said of this whole conversation, that is so critical nowadays. Can I ask you this too? And this might be a little difficult. And you mentioned something in that last segment you just said about the destruction you used to enjoy.
Mm,
Do you have any regrets?
no, because without the decisions, without the experiences, I wouldn't be here in this moment talking with you about it, reflecting on it. And this is where people, as people see themselves more clearly into the next generation, to the future, I think AI is reflecting back at us simultaneously how far we've come, how amazing we are, and simultaneously how far we've fallen, how disconnected we've become with each other. Um, so no, certainly don't have any regrets. I was always just doing the best I could with what I knew at the time, which is the same thing that I'm doing right now.
That's fantastic, actually, man. Great, another one, man. You're really great at this. Great segue, man. You're making my job easy here. Um, so let's jump into this part now. So since you quit your job, you've obviously made significant connections and you ventured into coaching, which just talking to you now briefly, I can see how much value you can bring to somebody. So kudos to that. But could you share a little bit how these new paths have influenced your own understanding of purpose and fulfillment? And would you have any advice that you might have for others that are seeking a similar transformation?
Something I've realized over the past year is we never know what other people are going through. So to approach each day with that gratitude to be here and that grace for ourselves and for others, I think that's the step into the transformation that people are seeking, right? Just that grace and that gratitude. And boy, it has been a journey the past year or so since I've stepped into it. Amazing, scary at times. Yet I'm finding that in the depth of connection with other humans, everything else falls away. Everything else falls away. Like stress about money, stress about whatever. Yeah, they'll be there. We're going to come back to that. But in that, the, the genuine connection, when we extend that grace for others and for ourselves, and we allow us to be here in the present moment with them, everything else kind of falls away. And to be connected with other people is the most valuable thing. And there's so much value in that. And the path presents itself as you step. It's not the other way around. I'm learning. It's not, oh, the whole path is, sometimes I only see one step ahead of me,
Mm.
but I look back at the past year and I see a path that's forming to know that it's working as it's meant to.
I love that, one step ahead. And it's so true, man. We hear that a lot, but it's really true about just handling what's there in front of you one small step at a time. And that's really, really good stuff. Um, I have a question here. Well, not a question, but I'm glad you mentioned, and I'm glad you're kind of doing the meditation thing, because I thought this would be kind of, you put me in mind of someone that I thought I've always wanted to ask somebody this. And I think you're the first person I'm kind of asking this. And I think you're the perfect person to ask this. So when you think and you're kind of meditating there, thinking of yourself as three individuals, you see TJ from the streets of New York, TJ from the battlefields of Afghanistan, and now TJ the coach. How do you transition those three into your own future self?
Wow, great question. So much of this is unlearning. I'm not necessarily learning how to become a coach. I am unlearning the who I thought I had to be to fit in, to be safe in this society. And I think underneath the preconceived ideas that I still hold right now, that I held while I was in the military, that I held growing up, underneath all of that is the same person. It's the same being. The essence of TJ remains unchanged, just like the essence of Charles is unchanged, no matter what transitions that we go through. So as I unlearn, I'm able to incorporate the lessons from all the different versions of TJ and express it in a way that is both freeing for me and I believe helpful for others.
Hmm. See, I thought I was ending with that, but now you just said something. I have to ask this now. The helping of others. This is a good spot to end, because I think you mentioned about the human connection. Now that answer there, so just raw and authentic. And you ended it with the helping of others. I, I'm trying to think how to phrase this, but even for myself, right? Like, TJ, how important is that? Because I'm finding more and more, like, I know as I'm doing this, it's not about me. It's become not about me anymore, right? It's become about, if I influence someone and I never even know I influenced them, that means I did exactly what I was supposed to do. I don't need to know. How important is this whole helping of others, and how does that, because I think helping others now, believe it or not, I think selfishly we help others because we don't even want to say it, but we're helping ourselves more than we even want to admit.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It has to be. It doesn't have to be. But I believe the path to the liberation and the freedom and the life where we are emotionally regulated and okay is being selfish. It is knowing that we're being selfish because we can't fill anyone else's cup until we fill our own cup. We can only love the world to the capacity at which we love ourselves. And in a world that is constantly reflecting back all the ways why we shouldn't love ourselves unless we buy X product or do X thing or achieve X goal. It's knowing we are enough where we are, exactly as we are, and then choosing our path forward from an empowered place, not from a place of I'm not good enough unless I get there. It's like, no, we're already here. We're doing great.
Man, great way to end it, man. I think that was wonderful, and I truly appreciate it speaking to you and just hearing your honesty and your authenticity, man. And you didn't disappoint, man. You kept the streak alive here in a great way. I feel like I'm batting 1,000 this year as far as the people I've had on the show, man. I'm just dumbfounded that you guys want to speak to me. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Charles. It's been awesome being on your podcast and getting to know you. And I'm pumped. I'm
Yeah,
pumped for our journeys to continue and how they may
yeah,
continue to come back together in the future.
yeah, definitely, man. So I would be a really bad host. Well, whatever. I probably am sometimes, but if I did at least let you plug, you got anything? How can people get a hold of you? Anything you want to plug or people should be looking out for that you got coming up?
Sure, absolutely. So TJ Beaudette on LinkedIn, TJ Beaudette on Instagram are the two avenues where I post and connect with people the most. Right now, I'm looking at putting together retreats in the probably April timeframe for the first one. So be on the lookout for some information that I start posting about that. And it's about it. I'd love to connect with whoever hears this and resonates with it.
Yeah, let me just say this. Please do connect with TJ because I pretty much, again, I reached out and he responded pretty much immediately, and it was fantastic. And I'm really grateful. And I think this has been a really good conversation that you've will help a lot of people when they hear your story and your message. So TJ, I wish you nothing but success. I stopped wishing people luck in 2024 because everybody I've spoken to, they don't need luck because they're just taking 2024 by the you know what and crushing it. So good on you guys, man. So everyone, I'm grateful that you tune in each week. Thank you all. And please support TJ and all my guests. Thank you very much. Take care. Thanks again, TJ.
Thank you.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening, and remember, never hibernate on your goals.